Welcome to a webinar on the Outthinker process. My name is Kaihan Krippendorff. I'm very pleased to be able to bring this webinar to you thanks to AltaGerencia and to the sponsorship of EPM, EPM in Colombia. And this will be an introduction to the Outthinker process in Spanish. So the Outthinker process is a program that we've now conducted for 4,000 to 5,000 executives and entrepreneurs. And what it is a systematic methodology to help you see strategic options that others don't see, to help you outthink your competition. We like to start the seminar, the workshop often, with the story of Dick Fosbury. Dick Fosbury in 1968 was standing in the middle of a stadium surrounded by thousands of people watching him. He was about to do something unorthodox. He ran down the field, he jumped up, and as his body approached the high bar, he twisted awkwardly and flipped over backward, landed on his back. Everyone started laughing at him, and the laughter grew louder and louder, because people had never seen this before. It looked really awkward. But as Dick Fosbury got up and stretched his back out, and he looked at the bar that was still standing, it hit him. He had won the gold medal. And then it started hitting other people, other fans in the stadium. This guy was going to win the gold medal. And he won the gold medal that year. It took the competition 8 years to catch up to him and to start doing what he did, because they had all trained themselves to do something very different. They had all trained themselves to jump over the high bar going forward using what's called a straddle or scissor technique. And every gold medal winner until 1968 had won by going over forward. Every coach had trained them to go over forward. Every expert would have told you the way to clear the high bar most efficiently is to go over forward. Now, Dick Fosbury literally turned his back on tradition, went over backward, stunned the competition, won. And it took the competition 8 years, as I said. 8 years later, 90% of high jumpers were jumping over using what's now called the Fosbury flop. This illustrates what we mean by outthinking the competition. Your competitors fall into a set way of doing things, a routine. The outthinker emerges. They see the world differently, so they act differently. They see things as possible that others don't see as possible. And they do those things. Then the competition ignores them and laughs at them. And by the time the competition tries to fight them, it's too late. The outthinker has already won. As Mohandas Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. Let me give you an illustration from the realm of business. There was an owner of some radio stations, and he was in trouble because his customers could no longer afford to pay for their advertising. So one customer shipped him a whole box of can openers and said, look, I can't afford to pay you anymore. So in order to pay my debt to you, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you the equivalent of what I owe you in can openers. And so this guy thought, well, what am I going to do with a bunch of can openers? So he decided he was going to try to sell them on the radio. And he told one of his DJs to stop playing music and start selling these can openers. And they did the usual stuff that you know of now. You know, here's a can opener, $19.95, and if you buy it in the next 20 minutes, we'll give it to you $15.95, and we'll give you an optional to buy a second one at just $5. And the process worked so well that he decided, this is great. I don't want my advertisers to pay me in cash anymore. I want them to ship me stuff, and I'm just going to sell them online. And so he asked his customers to start sending him goods, and he starts selling them online. And that turns into a new business, a radio station that doesn't sell advertising or play music. It just sells things online, direct sales. And that grew into what we now know as the Home Shopping Network, the first direct marketing TV channel. So here's an example again. The competition falls into a set way of doing things, a set way of running a radio station. The outthinker emerges. They see the world differently, so they act differently. People first ignore and laugh at the outthinker. Then the outthinker wins because the competition has failed to compete with them. The same pattern in all domains. What outthinkers do in business is they come up with these winning moves, as I call them, things that competition won't be able to respond intelligently to across many dimensions of their business. My research says that if the more dimensions a company can create a winning move in, the faster they grow and the more profitable they are, particularly across 8 dimensions. Your positioning, your pricing, your product, promotion, placement, processes, physical experience, and people. If we look at history's most disruptive companies, what they've done is they've created winning moves across multiple of these dimensions. Dell, Southwest Airlines, Walmart. If we go to more modern outthinkers, we see Vistaprint, Rosetta Stone, Genoma Lab. What they do is they do things across multiple dimensions of their business that the competition will not respond effectively to. So the question really is, do you want to do what your competitors do? Do you want to row your boat? Because you can win by just rowing a little faster than your competition. But that's hard. You sweat. You're tired. You get blisters on your hands. Wouldn't it be easier to stop for a moment and ask yourself, is there a winning move here, a way that I have not considered? Could I put up the sail and just sail past my competition? Do you want to be a thinker, or do you want to be an outthinker? What I've been doing for the last 5 years is studying lots of outthinkers, people and companies who have been handedly beating their competition. These people seem to be adopting a new paradigm, a new way of doing things, a new way of looking at the world. And if we look at and dissect what it is that they do, we'll see that they adopt 5 habits. And these 5 habits enable them to see strategic options that others overlook. The first is mental time travel, the ability to transport yourself forward in time and envision a future in detail that is different than today. That's the first prerequisite. You know, they say that man cannot create what he cannot imagine. If you cannot imagine big things, you cannot create big things. After you imagine a big thing comes the next habit, which is attacking the interconnected system. Rather than attack the obvious part of the system, you attack the interconnections, the interdependencies within the system. And that allows you to see points of leverage that others don't see. After you identify the points of leverage, you create lots of possible solutions. And you do that using the habit of frame shifting, changing your perspective on the problems many more times than your competitors, so you have a longer list of possible solutions than your competitors. By having that longer list, it allows you to be more discerning in which strategies you choose to execute. And this is where the disruptive mindset comes into play, that you choose to do things not just that customers would love, but that also that competitors will not copy. You know, Steve Jobs is famous to having said, "I'm as proud of what we don't do as what we do." When you have a long list of possible ideas, you can be more discerning and kill off, choose not to do the ideas that competition will copy. Finally, those 4 steps will give you a really disruptive, innovative, unorthodox, seemingly crazy idea, and then becomes a challenge of convincing other people of the idea, building support for your idea. Now, it's kind of hard to remember all 5 of these habits. So instead, what we do in our program is we teach people a 5-step process. In English, this spells IDEAS, I-D-E-A-S. Imagine, dissect, expand, analyze, sell. Imagine, dissect, expand, analyze, sell. If you can get your people, before they make an important decision, to stop and imagine, dissect, expand, analyze, and then sell their idea, you will find that you are making disruptive ideas every day across all of your businesses, all of your people thinking innovatively, looking for opportunities to outthink the competition. That's what the promise is of the program. So we don't have time to go through all of these today. So we're going to focus on expand, and we're going to provide you with 3 of 7 tools that we typically provide in a program to help people expand their solution set. So how do we expand our solution set? Well, we can learn a lot about how strategists see new strategic options, how they see more options than others, by looking at how chess players play. Here's a picture of Alexandra Kostanuk. She's the reigning women's world chess champion. We interviewed her several times for my most recent book. And if we look at what kind of mental exercise she goes through to win these games, we get insight into how strategists think. Here you see she's playing a whole series of games, say 20 different games. She stops in front of one, she looks at the board, she sees the winning move. She goes to the next, she looks at the board, she sees the winning move. She goes to the next, she sees the winning move. Now that guy who's looking down at the board in front of you, he's going to be looking at his board for 20 minutes trying to figure out what is the winning move. What is Alexandra going to see and pull on me? And he's not going to see it. And within 30 seconds, she's going to immediately see it. How did she do that? How does she see when options that others don't see? Well, it has to do not with her innate intelligence, but simply that she performs a mental trick that allows her to overcome a mathematical challenge. And that mathematical challenge is that humans can only remember 7 plus or minus 2 things. So when you're playing a game that only has 7 plus or minus 2 possible moves, you can use our usual logical mind to think about those, to contemplate those. But most of the games we play are much more complex. We play games, especially in business, that at every moment have more than 7 moves, that probably have hundreds and thousands of possible solutions. And so we run out of memory. So how do we overcome this? Well, to illustrate what Alexandra Kostanuk does to overcome this, to break through this barrier that stops you and I want you to remember the last 4 digits of my cell phone number, 3305. 3305. Don't write that number down, just remember that number. When we do this in class, what we find is half of the people are using what's called our phonetic loop. That means that we're telling ourselves 3305, 3305, 3305, 3305. Ask yourself, are you doing that right now? It's about 50% chance that that's what you're doing to remember that number. About half of participants use what's called our visuospatial sketchpad, which is that we are visualizing a number. So ask yourself, are you visualizing a number perhaps? Maybe the shape that the number would make on a telephone keypad? So usually we use either our visuospatial sketchpad or our phonetic loop to remember numbers, to keep anything in short-term memory. But there's a third way, a third method for maintaining things in short-term working memory that I'd like you to consider. And to illustrate that, I'm going to ask you to remember a different number. Remember this number, 2468. 2468. Now that is probably a number you don't have to use either your visuospatial sketchpad or your phonetic loop to remember. It's a number that you've seen before. And you probably have an idea what the next number is. It's probably 10. You can unpack that number from 10 to 12 to 14 all the way to 2,000,004 and 2,000,006, because each piece of information tells you what is the next piece of information that you need to pull up. And what that allows you to do then is effectively take a whole bunch of moves and remember them just as one thing, and that's what Alexandra Kostanuk does. She looks at a game and she says, I recognize this game before. This is the game that I call 2468, and the next move is 10. And then she goes to the next one. She goes, I recognize that game. The next move is this. It is a story. It's a narrative. And she always knows what the next step of the narrative is. And this has actually been measured, that master chess players recognize twice as many games or narratives as experts, and grandmasters recognize 10 times as many. Your ability, your people's ability to see strategic options others don't see is simply a function of the number and diversity of strategic narratives that they bring to the game. So my research uses a system of 36 narratives, and based on that system, I have used that to study the histories of about 400 disruptive companies. And my research says that there is a paradigm shift underway today. And the strategies that won you success over the last 30 years will not work today. And what is going to work today is a new playbook, a new set of strategies. And those strategies are these 7 strategies. For this webinar, we're going to just provide you with the first 3. Await the exhausted enemy at your ease, coordinate the uncoordinated, and be good. So first, await the exhausted enemy at your ease. This is plays on the fact that it's better to be first to battle. Sun Tzu says, he who is first to battle is at ease, and he who is late to battle is at labor. There are 2 generals, they're fighting each other, and one general realizes he can't win, so he identifies the next battleground. He orders his men to march for 3 days and 3 nights. The first night they light 10,000 campfires. The second night they light 5,000 campfires, and the third night they light 2,000 campfires. The opposing general, he observes this 10-5-2, and he interprets that his enemy is getting weak. Maybe the men are getting redeployed, maybe they're dying, maybe they're running away. So he wants to catch up and beat them. But he has 3 days of marching to catch up on. So he gathers a small army that he can march really quickly, puts in light armor so he can run them fast, and he begins chasing. Now, the retreating general, he identifies the next battleground. He identifies that his enemy is going to arrive at a town called Meiling at dawn. So when you identify the next battleground, consider moving there first. He moves his men there. They set up fortifications. They eat dinner. They go to sleep. And just before dawn, they wake up and prepare for battle. When the pursuing general arrives, remember, he's got a small army, lightly armored. They've been marching all night. They're tired. They're sweaty. They stumble onto the battlefield, and what they find is an enemy that is entrenched, rested, defended, and 5 times the size that they expected. It's such an uneven battle that it only lasts 2 hours. That's the power of identifying the next battleground. So you want to identify the next battleground. Or in hockey, there was a hockey player, Wayne Gretzky, known as the greatest hockey player of modern time, and someone once asked him, why are you such a great hockey player? He said, simple, because I skate to where the puck is going while other people skate to where the puck is. The same principle. Let your competition fight the current battleground while you move to the next battleground. How does it look in business? Rosetta Stone is an excellent example of this. I get a chance to interview the CEO of Rosetta Stone a couple of times. Rosetta Stone has really come out of nowhere in less than 5 years to become the leading provider of language learning software in the US and Europe. And what the CEO described was exactly this next battleground strategy. He said that what I recognized was that we were competing with all the other competitors in the current battleground. The current battleground is using technology to replace the classroom experience of learning a language. The future battleground is technology replacing the immersive experience of learning a language, telling customers that don't move to Italy for 6 months to learn Italian. This product will simulate the experience of living in Italy and learning the language because you're just forced to learn the language. They adjusted their entire strategy to this. They raised prices from $30 to $300. They opened kiosks. They fired managers and hired new managers. They redesigned their product, and by doing that, they moved ahead and they sailed past the competition. So where is the next battleground? What about Mercado Libre? Mercado Libre was created by 2 guys from business school, and they said, where's eBay's next battleground? eBay's next battleground is going to be Latin America. So we're going to move there first. They moved to Latin America, and they basically replicated the eBay model, figured out all the problems of implementing it in Latin America. And then when eBay decided to enter Latin America, they decided to buy Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre goes public in mid-2007 at a price of $100. Today it's trading at $275 per share. That's the power of moving early to the next battleground. Where is the next battleground? And what can you do now to start moving there? The second tool that we want to provide you with is coordinate the uncoordinated. The question is, who can we coordinate? This plays on the fact that power comes from coordination. This is why birds fly in flocks. This is why fish swim in schools. This is why animals travel in herds. They all create power by coordinating. Now, the old paradigm was that the way we created power was by buying things and controlling them inside our walls. The new paradigm is radically different. We don't have to own things. They don't have to be inside our walls. We can coordinate things outside of our walls without owning them. For example, Wikipedia. Wikipedia came out of nowhere and really kicked Encyclopedia Encarta from Microsoft out of business. 2 years ago, Microsoft pulled its Encarta product out of the market, just closed the business, didn't even sell the brand. And what they said in their press release was revealing. What they said was that we recognize that Wikipedia has a superior model. In other words, by coordinating independent experts to write content rather than hiring experts to write proprietary content, that model is superior. Coordinate the uncoordinated. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter all make it easier to coordinate the uncoordinated. Zagat, the restaurant guide, is written by restaurant goers and by readers. They're probably the original coordinator. You know, if you go to a McDonald's, say, in the United States, there's a good chance that if you go through the drive-thru, order a Big Mac, large fries, Diet Coke, that order is being taken by a stay-at-home mom who's working from her living room, typing in her home computer. The order is then sent to the store, and by the time you turn the corner, the food's waiting for you. What McDonald's is finding is not only is this lower cost, it also involves fewer order inaccuracies, because this person's not trying to do 3 things at once. Coordinate the uncoordinated. That's the second strategy that you want to consider, strategic narrative. What would it look like now to start coordinating the uncoordinated? Who is uncoordinated? And the third strategy that we want to share with you is to be good. How can you benefit others? When I was in business school at Wharton, that was the school that Donald Trump went to. And there was a famous book that he had written called The Art of the Deal. It was all about making the most money from the deal, all about making the most profit by cheating as many people as you can legally and capturing as much of the pie for yourself. What we believed, what we were taught at that point, was that corporations existed to serve shareholders. Serve clients, yeah, but the real goal was to serve shareholders. And if you serve shareholders, everything was going to work out. But that hasn't worked that well for many companies. Think about Enron. Think of what almost happened to Walmart. What we're seeing is the realization that a better long-term strategy is to serve multiple stakeholders. Also be good to the community, to employees, to the government, to the country, to the environment. If you do those things, you create more people cheering in your side, more people in your box, more people wanting you to succeed, more pull for your strategy. And so even, I'm not arguing that you should be good just to be good, although I think that's a great idea. But even if your objective is just cold, hard cash, just wanting to maximize value, you're better off being good to the community, to the environment, to your employees, to your country. One example of that is 2 gentlemen that I got to interview who created an interesting business in India. They created a power plant that you can put rice husks into, and you can burn those rice husks to create enough power to power a small town for 10 hours. So they're bringing light to areas of India that previously had no light. And they were thinking of making this a non-profit business, but then they decided that they were going to make it a for-profit business because they realized that it's better to, they can do more good for communities if they have a model that is also good for shareholders, because then shareholders will invest more money in it. So we're seeing this emergence of this third type of entity, not a for-profit, not a non-profit, but a social for-profit, a for-profit that is pursuing social ends. Another example of this is Desk Doctors, created by a doctor in Venezuela who moved to the United States, studied at Harvard, got his doctorate degree from Harvard, and one day someone came up from Venezuela to get a second opinion. And this doctor gave him a second opinion and said, you know, the first doctor was actually right. You actually didn't have to fly all the way out here to get a second opinion. It's too bad you have to make the trip. And he realized there are probably so many people who can't afford to make that trip. We have to do something for them. So Best Doctors came up with a radical solution. What this solution allows you to do is to call an 800 number and follow their process, and they get the best doctors in the nation, in the world, to give you a second opinion. And they're doing amazing things serving people. For example, there's one woman who was going blind, and she was diagnosed with brain cancer. She was about to have an operation. She'd scheduled the operation. They were going to cut open her head and remove this tumor. But she was a Best Doctors customer, or rather her employer was. So she called Best Doctors, and they did their thing, and they found a doctor who was an expert and said, you know, it may be that she has this rare condition that sometimes can affect the brain. Usually affects the muscles, but sometimes it can affect her brain. Most people don't know that. So why don't you test it out by giving her these pills? She takes the pills, and a week later, she can see. Amazing. She was almost going to have her head opened up. So they're doing really great work in the world, helping save people's lives. But they're also a very profitable business, 40% gross margins. They're growing at they're $120 million in revenue. They're growing at 30% a year. So the idea here is that you don't have to choose between doing good and making money. The best is to do both. And here's one last example. This is from a company that my cousin works for. She moved here to the United States from Germany to work for this little startup company that really isn't that little anymore because they've grown immensely over the last year. And one of the reasons that they've grown so much is because this is their mission. This is their credo. I'm going to read it for you, read parts of it for you. This is your life. Do what you love and do it often. If you don't like something, change it. If you don't like your job, quit. If you don't have enough time, stop watching TV. If you're looking for the love of your life, stop. They'll be waiting for you when you start doing things you love. So this is the message that they're putting out to the world. They're not advertising their products, their goods. They're advertising a mission that people want to be part of. And because of that, this thing has been retweeted millions of times on the internet and has driven their sales to more than double this year. So they just go out there and find your social mission, do something good, and by the way, you'll make money. If you impact millions of lives, you'll make millions of dollars. Those are 3 tools we want to provide you with. Awake the exhausted, editing at your ease. Coordinate the uncoordinated, be good. If you apply those to your business, we believe that you're going to see strategic options that your competitors are going to be overlooking. And that was the core of the expand phase. During the workshop, we'll go through 4 more stratagems. And, of course, introduce you to similar tools to help you imagine, dissect, analyze, and sell. This is my website. It was a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this brief webinar. Hopefully it was useful for you. Please do stay in touch, and thank you again for EPM, EPM, for sponsoring this webinar, for their clients, and for you. Have a great day.